Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Bears Pod with Parker Hurley. I'm your host, Parker Hurley. Check me out on Twitter at Parker Hurley. Follow us at beargoggleson.com and right here at the Bears Pod with Parker Hurley, giving you the latest and greatest Chicago Bears news every Tuesday and Thursday, 6 o'clock to 6:30 Eastern, 5 o'clock to 5:30 Central. For you Chicago Bears fans, we're still right in the middle of free agency. We're still right in the middle of NFL draft season. So we're excited here. Hit like, hit subscribe, leave your comments. You guys control the chat. You guys dictate what we're going to talk about today. So leave them in there. But we're still wrapping up some free agency. And before we get into, we're still shifting from free agency to the NFL draft, and so are the Chicago Bears. Before we get there, they did just have some recent news. It's some pretty quick news that we're going to touch on real quick here. So they signed Dylan Cole, a guy from the Tennessee Titans, some depth free agency. And that's basically the extent of what we're going to get in terms of who the free agents are. And with the NFL draft coming, a lot of teams, it's not smart to sign now because of a team draft somebody at your position versus if you sign at the end of the NFL draft, then all of a sudden you can pick and choose based off of, okay, this team didn't fill their needs in the draft and I'm a free agent, I can sign there. So you're not going to see many signings, but the Chicago Bears did sign Dylan Cole, linebacker. What you initially think is, oh man, another linebacker. They went out, paid TJ Edwards, paid Tremaine Edmonds. They already had Jack Sanborn. Now they're going to pay Dylan Cole. But when you really look at it, he's been in the NFL since 2017. He played like 400 snaps last season because the Titans defense was falling apart, but he's also played like 500 snaps from 2017 to 2021, but he's a five-team face special teamer. When you look at the Chicago Bears depth chart, you see that Tremaine Edmonds will play the mic. He'll be the middle guy. TJ Edwards, the run and chase guy, and the will. They'll basically play 100% of the snaps. Then you've got Jack Sanborn in the Sam role. He'll probably play 20, 30%. Most of his role will be blitzing off the edge, defending the run a little bit, things like that. And behind them, you basically have Sterling Weatherford, who they took off the Colts practice squad just last season. He's a depth guy, special teamer. Dylan Cole, who would be the will depth best special teamer. And then DeMarcus Gates, who they signed from the XFL last season, who's depth. And that's basically the six linebackers right there. They fill out their entire linebacker core. So from rounds one to the entire mock draft, and we're going to have a mock draft here after we touch on this recent news. We're going to there's not going to be a linebacker though, because like I said, 1 through 6, it's going to be hard to see on the 53-man roster in August. I think 1 through 6 are pretty much solidified for the Chicago Bears. And before we get into the mock draft, another thing here for the Chicago Bears pod here is that the edge rusher position, we talked about it a little bit last episode, going to get into a little bit more now that when you look at the Bears roster, they probably need some interior defensive line help, but the big thing is they need some serious pass rushers on the outside. So who are some guys that they could still add? Everybody keeps saying Yannick Ngakoue, and I have an article, go check it out at beargoggleson.com, talking about why I don't think Yannick Ngakoue, one, why he isn't signed yet, and two, why the Chicago Bears of all teams probably aren't the team that's going to sign him. And it is mainly because Ngakoue is that player that goes from team to team looking for the most money, most money, most money. He's not looking for a long-term deal. The Chicago Bears, where they're still rebuilding their roster, they're looking to completely, reset this thing from the ground up. They're not looking for that one-year rental type of player. They're not looking to spend their cap in that way. So that doesn't fit. The second reason it doesn't fit is everyone says, oh, well, he came from the Colts. Matt Eberflus came from the Colts. He went to the Colts after Matt Eberflus, and it was because the new defensive coordinator, Gus Bradley, traded one of Matt Eberflus's guys away for one of his guys. And it's like Yannick Ngakoue does not fit the Matt Eberflus scheme. He fits the Gus Bradley scheme. And when Gus Bradley started to change his defensive front, he went out and got Yannick Ngakoue. It doesn't fit what Matt Eberflus goes for. And when you hear what Matt Eberflus goes for, he talks about hustle, intensity, technique, defending the run, all those things. And none of those things fit what Yannick Ngakoue does. And everybody sees the name Yannick Ngakoue and they see the sack total and you see every list of free agents and you say, well, the Bears have a need. He's the number one free agent. He's the highest rated guy. It's an obvious fit. when you look at the actual fit on paper in terms of how does he fit into the scheme, how does he fit with the coach Matt Eberflus, he's one of the worst run defenders in the NFL. Ngakoue is. The Bears are one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. They added DeMarcus Walker, who his big issue is pass rush. His big strength is run defense because they're trying to boost their run defense from the edges. They were just getting torched on the edges. So bringing in Ngakoue, I noted that he actually had a worse run defense than Al-Qadim Muhammad. And the reason Gus Bradley brought Ngakoue to Indianapolis was because Al-Qadim Muhammad followed Matt Eberflus to Chicago. And even Al-Qadim Muhammad, who was one of the worst run defenders and who was leading one of the worst run defenses, even he's a better run defender than Yannick Ngakoue. So there's no way Matt Eberflus is looking to, first off, pay somebody more than Al-Qadim Muhammad to be a worse run defender than Al-Qadim Muhammad. And yeah, the pass rush is going to be much better, this, that, the other. Eberflus isn't going to go for that in terms of the defense. And as we're going to get to in the mock draft here, when you look in terms of what you can get in pass rush, and I talk about it in terms of what should the Chicago Bears do with the 9th overall pick. When you look at it in terms of pass rush, you can go strength in numbers with pass rush. You can't go strength in numbers with the offensive line. You need talent across the board. You need 1 through 5 to be stable on the offensive line. You can go depth and you can wear teams down. And you can look at even a team like the New York Jets and you can say, who's who's the premier pass rusher? They have Quinnen Williams in the middle, but who are those edge rushers? The elite edge rushers. Well, they have, John Franklin Myers and Carl Lawson and Bryce Huff, and they kind of just Jermaine Johnson, their first round pick, and they kind of just rotate 4 or 5 guys in there, and they win with strength and numbers. And they win with wearing teams down. And that's where the Chicago Bears, in my opinion, are going with. And that's why they wouldn't go for somebody, first off, like Yannick Ngakoue. Some guys that I do think they could potentially go for, O'Shane Jimenez from the New York Giants. I think he's a really interesting fit because his rookie season was his best season, actually. And then during his second season, he tears his pectoral, so he's out for the entire season. His third season is the 2021 season, and he's on the New York Giants, and it's with Joe Judge as the coach, and he gets in the doghouse, and he plays like 10 to 15 snaps the first 8 games of the season. You're thinking as he's coming back from his, torn pectoral up there, you think he's coming back from that, he's getting slowly eased in, and then all of a sudden he's in the doghouse for the Giants for the rest of the season. They fire their coach, Joe Judge. It's a huge disaster. And Jimenez actually comes back and has a decent season last season. He's still a free agent. He's 25 years old. I am Scoes, man. Bear down. And like I keep saying, like, subscribe, leave comments if you got any questions. If you got any way you want to lead the chat or anything like that, let's go with it. We're talking draft. We're talking free agency. We're talking Chicago Bears for sure. And follow me at beargoggleson.com and at Parker Hurley on Twitter. But like I was saying, when you talk about a guy like O'Shane Jimenez, that's where you're talking about, okay, his pass rush numbers aren't gaudy, in terms of these aren't the Yannick Ngakoue types of pass rush numbers. But what you do see with O'Shane Jimenez is, like I said, he's entering his 5th year in the NFL. He's about 26 years old. So one of the big things Ryan Pace has done is, sign those guys, even Tremaine Edmonds, even, TJ Edwards, but even last season, Lucas Patrick and Byron Pringle, even with TJ Edwards and Byron Pringle and Lucas Patrick, those are UDFAs off of their first contract. So you look at a guy like O'Shane Jimenez, a 4th or 5th round pick, who, like I said, his rookie season and his 4th season were actually in terms of rotational pass rush. And when you look at the Chicago Bears defense, you say, as a pass rusher, he's not that bad. As a run stuffer, he's better than, Dominique Robinson, who's starting for the Bears right now. He fits in terms of he would sign a multi-year deal, whereas Ngakoue wouldn't. He fits in terms of the salary. He fits in terms of the run defense, and he fits in terms of the hustle intensity technique and things of that nature that Matt Eberflus goes for. So I know O'Shane Jimenez, it's not like, oh man, the Chicago Bears signed O'Shane Jimenez. But when you look at the draft and you say that they can start filling needs in the draft, and you say that this is just another depth body, and this is another body that, like I keep saying, pushes Trevis Gibson and Dominique Robinson maybe down a peg, then it's still a pretty good signing. Another name that I think is pretty interesting is Rasheem Green, who was recently on the Houston Texans. He was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. I think he was like a 2nd round pick even, and he came out into the NFL when he was 20 years old. So he's even younger than Jimenez. He's like 25 years old, and he spent a couple more seasons in the NFL. he was on the Texans last season, so what can you really say in terms of they weren't doing much. They had a lame duck coach. They were just as bad as the Chicago Bears. But when you're talking about guys who can defend the run, guys who are at the age where there's still upside coming, you talk about guys like Rasheem Green could potentially fit the Chicago Bears in terms of if you want to get some depth in numbers in terms of your pass rush. He defends the run better. He has more upside in terms of his age. He has more upside in terms of his contract, the money and the length. So he's a guy that I think you look for instead of Yannick Ngakoue. The last name that I think I look into is Shaq Lawson, who was a former first-round pick. So, I mean, you have to look into that and say that there's at least, and he was a former first-round pick in like 2016. So he stuck around the NFL, and a lot of those types of players, you say, okay, he didn't live up to the first-round pick status in terms of sack numbers and things of that nature, but he stuck around the NFL, and he hasn't been a bust because he fights in terms of run defense. He plays the hustle game. Whereas, like I said, Yannick Ngakoue isn't signed right now because he doesn't do the hustle. He doesn't do the technique. He doesn't do the run defense. Shaq Lawson doesn't have the upside and the sack numbers that Ngakoue has, but he does all those little things that causes teams like the Buffalo Bills to sign him. And the Buffalo Bills are a team that gets, strength in numbers, and they get a huge rotation going, with Rousseau. And even when Von Miller was in there, but, they were just Boogie Basham, just throwing multiple guys out there. So as a part of a group of rushers that the Chicago Bears still don't have right now, you could do worse than Shaq Lawson. So I'm going to take a drink here. Like I said, leave some comments if you guys have anything you want to talk about here. We're talking about the Chicago Bears, talking about some free agency. Follow me at beargoggleson.com, at Parker Hurley on Twitter. We're going to get into some draft talk here. Like I said, we basically wrapped up free agency. They're signing guys like Dylan Cole now. So there's really not much that, what are we really going to talk about in terms of free agency? I talked about a few names, doesn't really move the needle. Okay, let's talk about what should the Chicago Bears do with the 9th overall pick. And I already said that you can listen to my rationale last episode. I talk about it here already. I think they have to go with left tackle. And here we go. Yeah, a comment from I Am Skokes. I think he has a weird feeling it's Paris Johnson Jr. He thinks the hype is real right now. I was just honestly, like I just said, I think I completely agree with you because I think at this point you have to go with the tackle because at number 9 overall, if you're the Chicago Bears and you're expecting to be winning next season, you don't expect, and you do have the Panthers pick, but you just don't expect to be in a situation where you could take a guy like Paris Johnson Jr. again, and they are in a situation where they should be able to take one of the best left tackles, if not the best left tackle. It's hard to see the board breaking to where they aren't taking the number 1 left tackle with that 9th overall pick. And so it does come down to, in my opinion, is it Pete Skoronski? Is it Paris Johnson Jr.? Is it, in my opinion, I think maybe even, I don't think dark horse is even the right term, but I think in terms of some of the Bears media and some of the Bears talk out there, I think a dark horse is Broderick Jones from Georgia. I don't think there's anything, against him whatsoever. I think there's ups and downs in all three of them. And basically, I think the Paris Johnson, like you said, to kind of answer your question there, and like I said, ask some more questions, leave some comments, everything like that. And follow us at beargoggleson.com and at Parker Hurley. To get to the Paris Johnson, I do think the Pro Day may have solidified things, and the Chicago Bears were just at the Northwestern Pro Day, just at the Georgia Pro Day, just at the Ohio State Pro Day, to where he kind of has the combination of everything. With Peter Skoronski, you say he's probably the most technically sound. He may be the most easily day-ready number 1 guy. He can come in and he can push in terms of the run blocking. I hear a lot of people say his tape is almost the most boring of the 3. And then on the other side, I think you would say if anybody had the best highlight tape of the 3, I think Broderick Jones has the best highlight tape of the 3. There's clips of him mauling dudes. There's clips of him picking, defensive linemen up. There's clips of him throwing dudes down. Some of the best clips of him that I highlighted on beargoggleson.com, check it out, where I talk about Broderick Jones and how good of a fit he is with the Chicago Bears. Is this dude is 6'5", 315, and unlike Pete Skoronski, he has the required length. But when you see him pull, and you see him, he's like 10 yards downfield, in running. Like, I mean, you could like see me, I'm a thinner dude. I'm like 180. He's like 310. And when he's 10, 15 yards downfield, he looks faster than me. And he looks like he's in better shape than me. And you talk about a guy like Broderick Jones is a lean 310. And Lance Zierlein, one of the things that he wrote about on NFL.com, one of his negatives about Broderick Jones is, well, he could put on a little mass, he could put on a little muscle. His frame could be, maxed out a little bit more at the NFL level. And that's where you talk about, is a guy like Peter Skoronski maxed out in terms of, his arm length is truly maxed out. And, no matter what you say, could he get around it? Yeah, he could be a completely fine tackle, but that's always going to be something that, limits the upside of maybe he isn't the greatest tackle of all time. And I'm not saying Broderick Jones could be that, but I'm saying if Broderick Jones does put on that muscle mass, if he does become that, like I said, he's already a freak show in terms of how he gets out in space and he gets out and moves in the run game. If he gets, like Lance Zierlein said, a little bit of technique in terms of like his hip and his back and his placement and things of that nature. And what I talk about is Peter Skoronski maxed out. He has 1,200 snaps at tackle. Broderick Jones only has like 600, 650 snaps at tackle. What Broderick Jones was, he was a top 10 NFL, or he was a top 10 prospect out of high school. Went to Georgia, was one of the most, highly sought after prospects. But he's sitting because Jamari Sawyer, who, people actually said Jamari Sawyer didn't have the length to play tackle, but because Rashawn Slater for the Chargers got hurt, Sawyer was a starter for the Chargers as a rookie at left tackle during their run. And so he was the reason that Broderick Jones didn't start anymore. So when Sawyer goes down, Broderick Jones comes in on the fly as a true sophomore on a national championship run at left tackle. He gets about a couple games in, for the SEC championship, the couple playoff games, things like that. Broderick Jones got to play left tackle in those situations. Then he comes back and has an excellent season and continues to boost his stock. And like I said, people are talking about his technique. Peter Skoronski's played, every single season from a true freshman the whole entire way. So his technique is, his technique is there. His technique is maxed out. He's a completely fine prospect. But my thing is, if you can get Broderick Jones's, like I said, some of the things like his back and his ability in pass protection, if he can get a little bit more straight in his back and things like that and create a little more power, and he puts on 10 to 15, the debate of, oh, it's close, Broderick Jones and Peter Skoronski. If Broderick Jones puts on 15 pounds of mass and he becomes a technically better player, it's not a debate because Broderick Jones is just a physically better player overall. So there's so much more upside in Broderick Jones than there is in Peter Skoronski. So it's still a question in my opinion. But like I Am Skunk said, I think you could easily say that, okay, Peter Skoronski may have the most boring sound, technically sound tape. It's just easy going. It's so easy. Peter Skoronski just gets the job done. You look at Broderick Jones and you say, well, there's the highlight tape, but it's a little uneasy at times. It's up and down, but the ups are, so much higher than Peter Skoronski. Paris Johnson is almost in the middle of like almost a perfect tackle if, you could dream up a tackle in a lab and things like that. And that's where, you saw him at his pro day was, just checked another box, checked the box at the combine. He's a 3-year player, just like Broderick Jones. He was a top 10 prospect out of high school, just like Broderick Jones, because of some of the left tackles at Ohio State. It took him a few years to turn into the starter there. He was even playing right guard. And that's where one of the things with him is when he comes into the NFL, in terms of pass protection, just like Broderick Jones, I think there's a little bit to be ironed out, but his arm length, he's got like, what's crazy is Broderick Jones has like 60th percentile arms, and Paris Johnson still has like 2 inches on him in terms of his arm length, because Paris Johnson's arm length is like absolutely insane, and it allows him to get away with some of the finer details in terms of pass protection. And he's a little bit underrated in terms of like his power and strength, and he could probably be a little bit more powerful. And just like Broderick Jones, if he puts on 10 pounds of muscle, his maxed out version is so much higher than Peter Skoronski's maxed out version as well. But like I said, he's got the longer length. He's probably, although Broderick Jones has more of the highlight reel pass block or run blocking plays, Paris Johnson's right there, and Paris Johnson's really good in space too. And he may be more technically sound in terms of, things like down blocking and things of that nature. So you do kind of look at it and say, the safest play is probably Skoronski. The home run grand slam swing is probably Broderick Jones, but the safe, easy, like probably, the no doubt pick is Paris Johnson Jr., the left tackle from Ohio State. And like I said, the one positive is that he played right guard as a freshman. He's played on that right side. Do you move Braxton Jones to the right side because of Paris Johnson Jr.? In my opinion, yes. I think that like I said, there's just in that top 10, when you have somebody who can play left tackle and that they can just step in there and be that guy for years and years and years to come. And did Braxton Jones show a lot? Yeah. Did Braxton Jones, does he deserve another chance? Yes. Is he a good run blocker? Does he do everything they want him to do in terms of being able to pull, get out in space, extend some of those Khalil Herbert, Justin Fields runs? Was that because Braxton Jones is a pretty athletic tackle? Yes. And do I think that that could work on the right side? I mean, why wouldn't it in terms of he was a 5th-round pick. They didn't draft him to be their starting left tackle for the future. When they went to OTAs, as crazy as it sounds, Tevin Jenkins was their starting left tackle, or he was competing with Larry Borum at the left tackle spot. Then all of a sudden they got shifted to the right tackle spot because who was on the right tackle side was Braxton Jones at first, and then they started shifting. So, and Ryan Poles has said it from the very start. He said, "We're going to start the best 5. We'll worry about the sides, this, that, and the other, but we're going to start the best 5." And if they start it in terms of they call Braxton Jones on the Friday after the draft, and they say, "Hey, we drafted Paris Johnson Jr. We want you working on right tackle. We want you to show up first thing. You're going to be a right tackle." You already, like I said, you spent. I don't have the exact number of days he spent at OTAs. I don't think it was honestly a lot. And I think by the time he got to training camp, maybe 2 or 3 practices at right tackle, maybe 3 or 4 in OTAs, 2 or 3 in training camp, so but he trained in terms of, as a 5th-round pick, he was expected to be the swing tackle, and he was expected to play right and left when both were needed. So in my opinion, if you draft a guy like Paris Johnson, you say Braxton Jones, you're moving to right tackle. You have all summer to do it, and you could easily do it. So I think it's going to be interesting, but I do think they would draft Paris Jones or Paris Johnson Jr. Broderick Jones. I honestly, if I could rank them, I think right now, and I go back and forth, they're all really good players. I think right now you got Broderick Jones or Paris Johnson Jr. number 1, Broderick Jones number 2, and then Peter Skoronski number 3. Just because I keep saying the safe play is Skoronski. I would rather swing for the home run than the double because I don't want to be picking in the top 10 again. And I want to knock that one out of the ballpark and just say, you know what, we got a Hall of Famer here and just a no doubter franchise guy. Aki Dragon, welcome back, man. As we saw you, he said he saw Darnell Wright going in the first. They probably won't be able to draft him in the second. Like I said the same thing. I think you mentioned it on Tuesday, and I said I don't know if he's even going to make it because the thing that I noted was you look at the Chiefs and you look at the Bengals sitting there at like 29 and 31, and what's one of their both of their biggest needs are right tackle. But even beforehand, you could even look into the Patriots all the way up at like 15 and 16 and say that they need a right tackle. And like I said, the way that right stock is just and I just saw he's under 22 years old. He's like 21 years old in a few months. Went to the Senior Bowl, dominated, went to the Combine, dominated against Will Anderson. Everyone says, and I said, he's got some of the best tape against Will Anderson. And really, you almost walked away kind of nervous about Will Anderson as the number 1 overall pick because of Darnell Wright. But it's almost like the more you think about it, you say maybe that just meant that Darnell Wright is a first-round guy. And that is where, like I said, man, if you're sitting there at 9 and you could take the tackle, I'm still tossing and turning between Paris Johnson Jr. and Broderick Jones, but I think you go Paris Johnson Jr. And we'll get into my mock draft here with the second pick. And this is kind of I posted this right before. I think if they could get somebody like this to fall to 54, Adetomiwa Adebariwe from Northwestern, the 3 technique. If he could fall and they could go Paris Johnson at number 9 and, Tommy from Northwestern with that 2nd-round pick, what a beautiful, situation. The issue, I think, is and I use the PFF simulator, so you never know if the PFF simulator is off or not. But Mel Kiper came out and said he's going to be like a top 15 pick. I don't know about that. We'll see. I mean, Mel Kiper obviously knows what he's talking about, but if he goes top 15, that's too rich. in my opinion. And he was one of the, freakiest guys in the combine. But one of the things I said was I compared him more to Solomon Thomas, who went second overall. And he went second overall because of all the athletic traits and this, that, the other. But just like Solomon Thomas, Adi Tomie at Northwestern, he played edge rusher. And in the NFL, he'd be much better as a three technique. And he's a little bit of a tweener. And that's where I think, the athletic traits are all there. But in terms of top 15, I could see top 40. I could definitely see top 50. I could see before the Bears pick at 54. I could easily see that. Top 15 might be too high for me because he's the same way as Darnell Wright from the Senior Bowl, from the Combine. He's checked a lot of the boxes, but really the tape is on and off for him because all the tape for him is on the edge, or like 98% of the tape for Tommy from Northwestern is on the edge, and all of the projection is for he's going to slide inside and be an edge rusher, or he's going to be a three technique inside player. So it's 100% projection for him, and that's where even Broderick Jones, you could talk, oh, he's got to clean up a little bit. There's no projection in terms of we don't know what position he really is, because the position he played in college is not the position he's going to play in the NFL. That's what you get with Tommy A, and that's why I still think at the end of Thursday night, we could be saying, yeah, Mel Kiper said that he was going to go top 15, and he's still sitting there at 32nd overall. And like I said, he could probably go 50 in the top, between 32 and 50 out of Bourrier from Northwestern. I wouldn't be surprised, but top 15, I would be pretty surprised about that. So, but I do think if you're the Chicago Bears, like I said, strength in numbers in that defensive line is something that I think would be the move. And sitting right there in that, 54, 61, 64, they have 3 picks there. I think 2 defensive linemen, but I think another person that I'm thinking about here is they go center with one of those picks. And there's really potentially 3 guys that could be on the board from either 54, 61, or 64 for the Chicago Bears when you're talking about Luke Whippler, Joe Tippmann, and John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota, Luke Whippler from Ohio State, Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin. In terms of who I think the Chicago Bears might be interested in, I'm interested in Luke Whippler for them because, one, I think the zone blocking scheme, I think all of them could fit, but I think Tippmann's just like a bigger body overall. Whippler's a lot smaller, but in terms of the Chicago Bears and when you want to get out on the move, I talked about Braxton Jones out on the move, second level, springing those runs. You get a guy like Luke Whippler in there who, that's so much more his game. He's not that power type of player, but when you're the Chicago Bears and you're thinking about all the speed that you have on your offense, and you're talking about that outside zone scheme that you're going to run, I wouldn't be surprised if Luke Whippler was pretty high on their radar. And of the, he's the underclassman. He's the youngest one of them. He's extremely athletic. He's got his arm length is probably what's in the fact that I think he needs to put on a little bit of power. But if you're the Chicago Bears, they just moved Cody Whitehair to center, so you potentially are drafting him in the second round. You could at least ease him in, but if he's ready, you can cut Cody Whitehair and save about $10 million. So that wouldn't hurt. But the fact that you have Whitehair there as a placeholder doesn't hurt you from taking a shot on Whippler, who may need 1 year in the weight room before. And a lot of people said, well, the decision for Whippler was, do I go back to Ohio State, prove I'm a first round pick and get drafted in the first round? Or do I come out now, maybe I'm a second, third round pick, but I could potentially, start my earning potential a little bit more. So Luke Whippler is going to be a really interesting guy. And when you look at, when Ryan Poles says that Cody Whitehair is moving to center, to me that says they're drafting a center, because Cody Whitehair is 31 years old. From 2020, here's the first thing, from 2016 to 2020, the epitome of health, the epitome of, when they asked him to play center, he played center. When they asked him to play guard, he played guard. When they asked him to do this, he did that, never missed a snap, was just this pure strength guy. And in 2020, he got injured and he tried to play through it. And it's almost like a lesson of, if you're injured, sit out and don't try and play through it, because in my opinion, 1, he was compromised because he was playing injured. 2, it just made things worse. And 3, he tried to come back early. And so from there, in my opinion, he's never gotten back to his old self. He's never rested the required amount. He's never been physically back to his old self. He was healthy in 2021, was just a shell of himself. 2022, he plays like 8 games and gets injured for the rest of the season. You can't. There's no way the Chicago Bears are going into the season saying, "Well, there's our starting center, the 31-year-old who in 2 of the last 3 seasons has had, multiple injuries with his lower legs, and then his play sapped off in terms of the last season." There's no way the Chicago Bears are doing that. So they have 3 second-round picks. One of those picks I would almost bet is going to be a center, and almost, like I said, one of the things the Chicago Bears did was when they drafted Tevin Jenkins, the Monday after they released Charles Leno and saved a ton of money. The Bears are going to do that to Cody Whitehair and save $10 million. We'll see. That is going to unfortunately wrap us up for today. We're going to dig into some more mock draft stuff. We're basically done with free agency now, so we're going to get into the NFL draft. Like, follow, subscribe at Parker Hurley, beargoggleson.com. Follow me, follow everything we do. We'll be back on Tuesday at 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central, every Tuesday and Thursday. So follow us every Tuesday and Thursday at the same time. We'll see you there. Peace out, man. We'll talk to you guys later.